I'm honestly a little too retarded to use AI. I don't know about you. I keep trying, and it's just...
It's a learning curve, which is interesting because we're roughly the same age here, right? We grew up in a different era where technology was about cell phones and it was about computers, right? And to the basis of technology, we were very adaptive towards it. We weren't illiterate towards it, but we were able to understand it. But now, when it comes to AI, it's a very different world because it's about speaking into it. It's about understanding it to understand us, which is a different connection that I feel. And when we look at it, when we look at these platforms now, something like OpenAI as being one of the founders here of ChatGPT, it was an interesting concept of how they could take something like Google and revolutionize it. I was watching this, the original in 2007, I believe it was, the original Steve Jobs presentation of the iPhone. And it was incredible because he was the first person to showcase a device that was a full screen. The full screen, touch screen, no stylus needed. And just the way he explained it was incredible. And that was a revolutionary momentum in what technology, cell phones, communication did. Now we're in this era of AI. Very interesting. Because the revolutionary side of AI now is becoming adaptive learning. So it's no longer a piece of technology and hardware that can just function because you click it to do so.
Right.
It's now a technology that can actually understand and adapt towards what you are looking for. That's very interesting programming wise.
For me, I know like ChatGPT 5 or 6, whatever we're on now, because like that's easy to use because it's querying and for searches. But my thing is I am sick of being data harvested everywhere. So I stick with like the open source stuff. So OpenAI was the front runner. You've got Microsoft Azure, and then you've got Google's Big Blue. Maybe I might be messing those names up, but basically those are the three. And you had Facebook who was running theirs. Facebook was like, we're falling behind here, and they open sourced their model. Just put it in there, like, here you go. We trained it all. Here's the model. Here are the weights. Go forth. And so that created an explosion of open source LLMs using, specifically for music or, protein synthesis. I mean, so you're able to start fine tuning this model because that base setup is that base learning is the difficult part. That's what requires the massive data center, the size of the heron. But once you fine tune it, like anyone can fine tune that model as long as you have that thing done. So I was able to, host that model on my computer. I was able to download the model and run it and have a self-hosted LLM. So I didn't have to use someone else that was using me as a data mine.
Right.
But even then, it's all about how do you speak to it. Because it's not coding, but you have to know how to prompt it correctly. And
exactly.
And how to do all of that. And it got to the point where, this is like an intern. I could spend a week learning how to use this so it makes it better, or I could just do the thing myself. And it would give me wrong information. I'm like, I was trying to have it help me do some Bitcoin stuff. And it said, oh yeah, this happened. Like China is the world's largest hash rate, the world's largest miner. I'm like, and I told it, I'm like, no, China banned Bitcoin. And it's like, oh yes, China banned Bitcoin in this date. I'm like, why did you just say that? Yeah. And like, oh, I don't know. So there's definitely, it's happening fast. I mean, it's moving fast.
And that's a good thing you bring up there, right? Speed. It's moving so quickly right now that people don't know what it's actually capable of.
Right.
So we're using it now in an era because we feel that we're so free in this world that we live in now. So we get to say, okay, now I can just take this and I can become more free, more and more free. But this is why even people like Elon Musk said it. He's like, I would slow down.
Yeah.
I would slow down because that's not what the world needs yet. Let's just transition a little bit onto the business side. Using AI tools inside business, very effective. Very, very effective. Done the right way now, we can actually systematize and duplicate ourselves a lot quicker than hiring people. And when I say hiring people, I mean there's certain jobs that you need physical human beings for.
Yeah.
And there's certain jobs that, if automated, could streamline a lot of startup entrepreneurship. people that have an idea in their head that want to now take that and to actually create a business. Not entrepreneurship like what we see today. Entrepreneurship today is, I have a logo, so I think I'm an entrepreneur. That's not fucking entrepreneurship. I got a logo, I got an Instagram page. Ooh, I'm a business owner. You know, you got to get to 10 years of business. Like 10 years of business is where you actually succeed and thrive, if you can get past that mark. And when you start to understand business in the way that it grows now, if you can utilize AI in the right positions, it allows you to expedite a lot of your foundational learning curve. The years that, you know, even the IRS and the CRA tell us that, you know, 3 years they allow your company, your LLC, to go into negatives without having to pay tax, because they're giving you 3 years to start up a company. It's going to take some time.
Right.
They've even understood that from a government standpoint, right? So when we now understand this, we have to say, okay, look, it's going to take 3 to 5 years to actually push this out. How do I now expedite that? Of course, you can hire a mentor coach, the quickest way that you could scale. But also, how do I utilize free and, if not very cost-effective resources monthly, $20 a month, $30 a month, $50 a month, of softwares now that can implement into your business to automate certain functions when it comes to brand management, when it comes to client management, when it comes to team management, when it comes to even training management. These are the 4 core fundamentals that it takes for businesses to thrive. So at Next Gen Wealthy, even what we do with a consulting perspective is we hone in on these 4 pillars. And we understand your brand management is very powerful. It's the way that people will see you and understand you and perceive you. When it comes to your client management, it's like, now that they've seen you, how do they now engage with you? How do they now are able to be a part of your ecosystem? Then team management. Now we have to step into, how do I now accumulate that team and be able to have people in the right resources to supplement and support the fulfillment now of what I'm selling, which is a lot of people, they don't have that fulfillment.
Right.
And then lastly, it's the training. How do I now hire people more? How do I hire salespeople? How do I now go global? How do I scale? These 4 systems are very fundamental to growth. And when you apply AI within these 4 systems, it's exponential growth now to being able to scale to 125 million, like Brandon Dawson talks about.
Right.
I mean, I'm curious, you know, like, why'd you decide to move here from Canada?
A lot of people ask me this. They're like, Jay, why'd you move all the way to Florida from Canada? And I'm like, freedom. I mean the weather. That's my going joke.
Okay.
And it's the way that I always open it up, because initially that's what it was. It was good weather. But coming to good weather was also understanding energy. You know, in a global pandemic, when COVID was hit and our country was locking itself down in such a way where businesses were literally failing, people were going bankrupt. Things were happening on a scale where then they opened it back up. The government, the Canadian government, decided to give us $40,000, $60,000 per business loans to help us revitalize and bring our companies back up, which is like, okay, perfect. Our government's actually standing for us. And then we locked down again for the next 3 months. And we shut down completely again. So this up and down behavior caused me to think, look, I got 2 offices built. I'm running a real estate company on one side. I have a marketing agency on one side. Now I got to shut them down. I got to open them back up. I kept one open during it. That is what it is, because the real estate couldn't stop. That's the engine. And from there, we had to now pivot. And the only way to pivot was to go and explore new territory. Where that takes me back to is my dad sharing a story with me. You know, he said to me, you know, my grandfather was a farmer out in India. And my dad was able to grow up enough to understand farming and understand that, and to make the pivotal moment to move out to Canada, to immigrate from India all the way to Canada, to live a life for his next generation. And for me now to be able to be born in Canada, had to look at now my pivotal moment on where I now needed to be, where I needed to position myself for me to not only just succeed, but to find true happiness. To understand that the dream that I have inside my head is possible with the right resources and the right environment. So I decided to take 6 months, and what the Canadians call snowbirding, decided to come down to the United States. And I had no expectation of even finding Tampa Bay, but I did have the expectation of living a Miami lifestyle. Okay. So I initially thought that I was going to move to Miami. I came out here, and then I was sponsoring a friend of mine. Her name's Noelle, and She was doing an amazing, women's only retreat where she, empowers women. And I became a sponsor of her event. So she said, hey, come out to Tampa. So I was on a yacht for the first time. I got to experience this whole, I haven't done this my whole life. I've lived a very lavish lifestyle up in Canada, but never been able to see like that Florida lifestyle, Okay. And then was able to experience this yacht. And then I look at the city of Tampa and I'm like, this is an incredible city. Like everyone's vibing about Miami right now and this whole hype on Miami and the part, which is fun. I was doing when I first moved here, I was doing 2 weeks on Miami, 2 weeks in Tampa. I was being able to explore both territories, but it really came down to understanding Tampa was a place for me because of the energy, the people, the cultivation, going downstairs and being able to run into Ric Flair, running into doctors, engineers, lawyers, some very powerful, influential people. I remember at Boulon, running into Jeff Finnick. He's the owner of the Tampa Bay Lightning. He's built basically all of Water Street around here. Having those handshakes and being able to connect with those types of people, I thought to myself, I'm like, this is the game because it's not about money. It's not about time. It's about people. So how do I get myself in the vicinity of the people that I aspire to be like? Jeff Finnick is building downtown Tampa. I'm a commercial developer for the last 10 years. He's goals for me. I want to build a high rise like this. I live in the most beautiful building here in Tampa, downtown here, Heron. One day I want to build this. One day I have goals and dreams. America gave me that possibility. It gave me the opportunity and it gave me the actual land to do it on. Look, immigration is an interesting thing because people come for different reasons. If Senior Trudeau wasn't who he was, my father wouldn't have been allowed into the country at that time for me to even be born in Canada. So immigration is something that is needed in all countries to be able to understand cultural differences, just overall globalization. But what's interesting about this is that illegal immigration now is the fucking problem. Illegal immigration now is coming in for the wrong reasons. If you are coming in as a refugee and the country wants to accept you and they have a program that actually allows that and there's a vetting process to it to a certain degree, even though you're leaving a warlike country, there has to be some protocol around that. There isn't that you just get to come inside my country and then just get to enjoy the benefits of why we've worked our asses off for generations to be able to provide this land and make it free. So when it comes to illegal immigration, we need to really understand that people hopping borders and being able to stay in countries without titles is absolutely not only disrespectful, that's a crime. That's a crime that needs to be punishable. And that needs to be enforced. And the governments need to be involved in this, and that's the way that territorial rights make it happen. Otherwise, make the whole world one country. Go on one globalization, go on one currency. Honestly, I don't think that it's a plan from them because the government isn't really in control because they're too busy trying to figure out who's in control. They don't have time to actually figure out the problems that are actually happening. And yes, they may be enforcing the fact that, they're not letting people illegally into the country. I don't give a shit if it's Democrat or Republican. They're not letting people into the country. They both want illegal immigrants out of the country. That's just a common, otherwise you wouldn't be for your country. But the problem is how you do it now. What is the methodology that you use now? Do you use it in a way of still bringing certain people in and having, again, a vetting process? Do you build a fucking wall? You know what I mean? Do you build a wall, and just say it's too bad, too sad? There's different methodologies now that are used within leadership parameters now that will allow you to be able to do this the right way. Now, in my opinion specifically, I would say, here with a southern border issue right now, which is the biggest thing for the United States at the moment right now, is, yes, control. But it's really just, how much money do we spend on the military already? Trillions of dollars are being spent on the military. How do we now systemize this and organize this in a way of not creating a wall? Well, maybe it is creating a wall, but creating an actual border, spending money and time in the infrastructure of that like we spend in our cities like New York and Miami, building these skyscrapers that are worth billions and billions of dollars. Like taking that same money and resources and being able to allocate that in an actual system, like the education system, like the government systems, like immigration systems, that actually will be able to give people a proper route. You know, getting an E2 investor visa for me was fucking hard. It was a lot. Like, I'm an intellectual, sophisticated businessman. It took me 2.5 years and just like a lot of money and paperwork. And from that perspective, it's like, it's not easy for somebody to come in, but if you do make it simple, not easy, simple, and you're actually coming into this country to contribute, you have education, you're coming in with a skill set, you're coming in with a workforce to dominate and actually build a workforce, then you should be allowed to go and actually get passports in other countries. You know, US is just first for me. You know, Canada was Canada born. US is now my next placement to be able to earn the right here. But there's a lot of other countries in the world that also need my help and my support and my leadership.